Zakk Wylde, the legendary guitarist known for his work with Ozzy Osbourne and Black Label Society, recently shared his thoughts on the Ronnie James Dio era of Black Sabbath, describing it as a completely different band compared to the Ozzy Osbourne-led incarnation. His comments, which have sparked discussions among fans and critics alike, highlight the unique identity and musical evolution of Black Sabbath during the Dio years. Wylde's perspective not only sheds light on the band's versatility, but also underscores the profound impact Ronnie James Dio had on the heavy metal genre. Black Sabbath is often credited as one of the founding fathers of heavy metal. Formed in Birmingham, England in 1968, the band originally consisted of Ozzy Osbourne, vocals, Tony Iommi, guitar, Geezer Butler, bass, and Bill Ward, drums. Their self-titled debut album, released in 1970, introduced the world to a darker, heavier sound that would define the genre for decades to come. With iconic tracks like Black Sabbath, NIB, and The Wizard, the band established themselves as pioneers of a new musical movement. Throughout the 1970s, Black Sabbath released a string of classic albums, including Paranoid, 1970, Master of Reality, 1971, Volume 4, 1972, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, 1973, and Sabotage, 1975. These records solidified their status as one of the most influential bands in rock history. However, by the late 1970s, internal tensions, substance abuse, and creative differences began to take their toll. Ozzy Osbourne's departure in 1979 marked the end of an era and left fans wondering if the band could continue without its iconic frontman. Ronnie James Dio, already a respected figure in the rock world for his work with Rainbow and Elf, was brought in to replace Ozzy. Dio's powerful, operatic voice and lyrical prowess brought a new dimension to Black Sabbath's sound. His arrival marked the beginning of what is often referred to as the Dio era of the band, which produced 2 studio albums, Heaven and Hell, 1980, and Mob Rules, 1981. Heaven and Hell was a critical and commercial success, widely regarded as one of the band's finest works. Tracks like Neon Nights, Children of the Sea, and the title track showcased a revitalized Sabbath, with Dio's vocals complementing Iommi's signature riffing. The album's darker, more fantastical themes contrasted with the gritty, blues-inspired material of the Ozzy era, giving the band a fresh identity. Mob Rules continued this trajectory, with songs like the Mob Rules and Turn Up the Night further cementing Dio's influence on the band's sound. However, tensions between Dio and Iommi led to Dio's departure in 1982, though he would return for the Dehumanizer album in 1992 and later form the band Heaven and Hell with Iommi, Butler, and drummer Vinny Appice. In a recent interview, Zakk Wylde shared his thoughts on the Dio era of Black Sabbath, describing it as a whole different band compared to the Ozzy years. Wylde, who has been a longtime collaborator with Ozzy Osbourne and a devout fan of Black Sabbath, emphasized the distinctiveness of the Dio era while acknowledging its importance in the band's history. With Ronnie, it's like a completely different band, Wylde said. The vibe, the energy, the songwriting, it's all different. Ronnie brought this incredible power and melody to the music that just took it to another level. It's still Sabbath because of Tony's riffs, but it's a whole new beast. Wylde's comments highlight the transformative effect Dio had on Black Sabbath. While the core elements of Iommi's guitar work and Butler's bass lines remained, Dio's vocal style and lyrical themes introduced a new dynamic that set the Dio era apart from its predecessor. Wylde also praised Dio's ability to connect with audiences, describing him as one of the greatest frontmen in rock history. Ronnie was a force of nature, Wylde said. He had this incredible presence on stage, and his voice was just unreal. He could sing anything and make it sound epic. That's why the Dio era stands out. It's got that larger-than-life quality that only Ronnie could bring. To fully appreciate Wylde's perspective, it's important to examine the musical and stylistic differences between the Ozzy and Dio eras of Black Sabbath. While both incarnations of the band are undeniably heavy, they approach the genre from distinct angles. The Ozzy era of Black Sabbath is characterized by its raw, blues-inspired sound. Tracks like Iron Man, War Pigs, and Paranoid are built around Iommi's iconic riffs, which often draw from blues scales and pentatonic patterns. Ozzy's vocals, while not as technically proficient as Dio's, have a haunting, almost primal quality that complements the music's dark themes. Lyrically, the Ozzy era often explores themes of war, addiction, and the occult, reflecting the band's working-class roots and the social upheaval of the 1970s. The production on these albums is relatively stripped down, emphasizing the band's live energy and creating a sense of immediacy. In contrast, the Dio era embraces a more polished, melodic approach. Dio's vocal range and theatrical delivery elevate the music to new heights, giving it a more grandiose and operatic feel. Songs like Heaven and Hell and The Mob Rules feature complex arrangements and dynamic shifts, showcasing the band's growth as musicians and songwriters. Lyrically, the Dio era leans toward fantasy and mythology, with Dio drawing inspiration from literature, folklore, and his own imagination. This shift in subject matter aligns with Dio's personal interests and adds a layer of sophistication to the band's music. The production on albums like Heaven and Hell is also more refined, with a greater emphasis on clarity and texture. The Dio era of Black Sabbath had a profound impact on the heavy metal genre, influencing countless bands and shaping the sound of metal in the 1980s and beyond. Dio's vocal style, in particular, became a benchmark for metal singers, with his ability to convey emotion and power inspiring a new generation of vocalists. Bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and Dio's own solo project, Dio, drew inspiration from the Dio era of Sabbath, incorporating its melodic sensibilities and fantastical themes into their music. The era also helped pave the way for the rise of power metal and progressive metal, genres that prioritize technical proficiency and storytelling. As a guitarist who has worked closely with Ozzy Osbourne for decades, Zakk Wylde has a deep appreciation for Black Sabbath's legacy. His own playing style, which combines Iommi's heavy riffing with a more modern, shred-oriented approach, reflects the influence of both the Ozzy and Dio eras. Wylde's comments about the Dio era also highlight his respect for Ronnie James Dio as a musician and a person. Dio's work with Black Sabbath and his solo career left an indelible mark on Wylde, who has often cited him as one of his heroes. Ronnie was just one of those guys who had it all, Wylde said. He was an incredible singer, a great songwriter, and just a really cool dude. I've always looked up to him, and I think his work with Sabbath is some of the best stuff they ever did. While the Dio era of Black Sabbath was relatively short-lived, its impact continues to resonate with fans and musicians alike. Albums like Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules are regarded as classics, and Dio's contributions to the band's legacy are celebrated by metalheads around the world. In recent years, there's been a renewed interest in the Dio era, with younger generations discovering the music and appreciating its timeless quality. The formation of Heaven and Hell in the mid-2000s, which reunited Dio with Iommi, Butler, and Apis, further cemented the era's significance and introduced it to a new audience. Zakk Wylde's comments about the Dio era of Black Sabbath underscore the band's ability to evolve and reinvent itself while maintaining its core identity. By embracing Ronnie James Dio's unique talents, Black Sabbath created a body of work that stands apart from the Ozzy era, yet remains an integral part of their legacy. The Dio era's emphasis on melody, fantasy, and technical proficiency helped shape the sound of heavy metal in the 1980s and beyond, influencing countless bands and leaving an indelible mark on the genre. As Wylde aptly put it, the Dio era sounds like a whole different band, and that's precisely what makes it so special. In the end, both the Ozzy and Dio eras of Black Sabbath are essential chapters in the band's storied history. Each brought something unique to the table, and together, they solidified Black Sabbath's status as one of the greatest and most influential bands of all time. Whether you prefer the raw, bluesy sound of the Ozzy years or the epic, melodic grandeur of the Dio era, there's no denying the enduring power of Black Sabbath's music.